Good evening, and welcome to 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, the second half of our doubleheader tonight. We began the evening with Inside the Pigskin, and now we are talking some baseball. And I am pleased to be joined by my guest, Mark Purcell, who's been on here before. Mark, welcome back to the broadcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And of course, Eric Katz, never any shortage of opinion, let alone no shortage of information either. Welcome back, EK.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here.
And last but not least, we have Chase Blake, who is emerging as a rising star on the network. Welcome back.
Thanks again for having me.
Your pleasure, my pleasure, your pleasure, everybody's pleasure. And Will Vocal, good evening, everyone. I like the way he said that. Good evening. This guy's going to be unbelievable in the chat room, as he is every time he goes out there and participates. So before I go any further, I want to point out that 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is being broadcast around the world. The audio version of the 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red and subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. Send your topic ideas to southfloridatribune@gmail.com. And also, please go out there and participate in the chat room. I can think of a few people out there in the chat room that want to come on because their actions speak louder than words, and they come on a lot. So if you want to advertise, cost efficiently, no problem. Call me 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com. You can find us on Twitter at Tribune South. And we want to thank Candy Ebling, who does some incredible work behind the scenes. So got to put your props out to your people. And now we can get going here. So Mark Purcell, obviously, is a favorite of all of ours. Chase, the first time meeting him. So, Mark, what I want you to do at the beginning here is why don't you give everybody an overview of what you do?
Well, I played minor league baseball for 15 years with the Tigers and the Astros, and played overseas, and then moved down to Lakeland and started a baseball academy. So we've been running that for the last 15 years. We've had some very good guys come through the program. Chris Sale came through the program. I got some very good coaches with me. Coach Terry McGriff got a World Series ring with Cincinnati. Kenny Kelly was a first-round pick by the Rays and the quarterback for the Miami Hurricanes. Plus some guys that's played college baseball and come back. We just had a chance, actually. My 12-year-old team finished second in Cooperstown last week, so we just got done with that. Getting ready to head to Fort Myers with our 17-year-old team coming up next weekend. We have a couple of really good players on there. KJ Scobie going to Louisville. Rhett Vaughn's going to Florida State. Maddox Simpson, actually, I'm a big Wolverine, but he's committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes as my shortstop. And looking forward for a good summer for our boys. We're up to 17 teams now. We actually have a little showcase coming up on Thursday with 10 colleges plus a couple big league squads that are coming to watch some of our boys out down here in Florida. So just baseball around the clock, and wouldn't have it any other way, actually.
All right. Well, you know what? You talked about it. So why don't you tell me a little about what you have going on Thursday? Promote it early, and then we'll get to the topics. Go ahead, Mark.
It's really not something that I really promote outside of the kids in our program. Like last year, I did have one open to the public where we had 30 colleges and universities come watch, from Florida Gulf Coast to UCF, and that. This one is really just our own boys. So I only invite like 10 schools to just come watch our boys. So I don't promote it to the public. So it's just something that my boys get a chance to do when they play in our program. So we have Florida Gulf Coast, UCF, Berry University, St. Leo, Flagler, Florida Southern, Florida Southeastern, who actually I think just finished third in the NAIA World Series. I think they finished up. And then we have a couple minor big league scouts that are coming out for us, like the Blue Jays guys coming out there for me to see a couple of my guys. So be something for them. And then I have my 16 and under, my 15s and 16s will be out there as well. So some of those young guys get to be put on that stage so they can hopefully learn from it to see where they want to get to and get hungry to get in the weight room or get in the cages or get in the long toss program or whatever they need to do. But I figured that getting them young guys out there around some of them schools watching too benefits both parties. So,
All right, you know what? Let's go to the chat room before we go down to business. All right, football talk with Bo. Yes, Bo, I know we're going to get you on sooner or later. How's it going, guys? Really much better now that you chimed in. Thanks a lot, Bo, for participating. We appreciate you very much. George Icorn. Yes, George Icorn. You'll be coming on sooner than later. Okay, so stand by the telephone. We're going to talk about some things, but we need more opportunities in baseball for youngsters with what all the soccer playing kids. Excellent point, George. All right. All right, first topic of the night. Okay, pitch clock. You know what, Mark? I'm going to start with you on a lot of these things because Eric and Chase and I have talked about it a lot, and then we'll give our 2 cents. Give me your observations of the pitch clock. Good. You like it in MLB?
I like it for the regular season right now. The playoffs, we'll see how that rolls out. Sometimes when every pitch is a little bit more intense or a little more important every time. The regular season, getting through some of the games, I like the cat and mouse things, especially with the runners or the hitters or people on base being able to pick over during the regular season. I can understand speeding up some of the games to make baseball a little bit quicker. I'm anxious to see how it's going to play out with the pitch clock in the playoffs more so than the regular season, especially when it comes down to maybe a ball four or whatever it may be because of the shot clock or the pitch clock expiring on something that might cause something to happen and otherwise wouldn't. So I am for it. Not against it. I think that it needs to be tweaked a little bit. I think that they got to figure out on how many times you can pick over to first and then having runners knowing that you can't pick over again and be able to get good jumps that way. I think that it needs to be tweaked a little bit on some of the things. This being the first year for it, though, I think it's benefited the game a little bit. I think that, yes, sometimes a pitcher needs to pick it up a little bit, but being a pitcher and all that, sometimes the faster we went, the harder we got hit. So sometimes we'd like to slow things down a little bit where, okay, I don't want to be 20 seconds in, man. Let me slow this down. Let me pick over. Let me step off for a little bit to help get some of the momentum away from the other squad a little bit. So I think that benefits the offense more than it does the pitcher, the pitch clock. So. But I like it right now. I'm just anxious to see how it's going to handle in the playoffs.
Yeah, that means I'll ditto that one, and I won't say more about it because you're the new person tonight talking about it. But I'll just say ditto, and that's it. Be done with it. But that said, I'll go ditto and then turn it over to Chase Blake to give me your observations on the pitch clock.
The only issue I have with the pitch clock is when I'm at the game, I lose an inning when I go to the bathroom. That's the biggest issue I have with it. But the older pitchers are the ones that are having the hardest time with it,
Right.
Unfortunately. But the young guys who are coming up, they've been doing it for a couple years now. So it's not going to be an issue for them, the ones coming up from AAA and the minors. Overall, again, it speeds up the game. I have an hour-and-a-half trip from the stadium. So for me, I like the savings of the 45 minutes of shave time.
Yeah, the only thing it does for me in the press box is it means that I have to run a little faster to get my beverages across the cafeteria in the press lounge. And I don't think anybody out here watching is feeling sorry for me. And I don't expect you to. It just means I have to giddy up and get back. Otherwise, I'm going to lose it anyways. But because I have MLB today and I'm tracking everything, whatever play I'm missing anyways, when I keep it score, I get it anyways. But no, it's okay. I mean, it is what it is. All right, Garrett, go ahead, close it out.
I mean, like I've said at first, I thought I wasn't going to like it. I mean, because it's I've been watching this game for over 20 plus years, and it's been supposed to be the same was what it's been. But I actually like it because number one, constant action. Number two, it's as far as the older pitchers having problems with it. I mean, it's not all the older pitchers who are having trouble with it. Some of them have adjusted well. Others who were notorious for just taking forever to throw the ball, those are the guys having problems with it. And that's, to flash into what George Icorn says. When you put something new in like that, there's, it's going to affect one thing or the other. I don't think it's as big as you might think. I think also keep in mind too that it actually expanded beer sales in some places. I know Milwaukee does theirs into the 8th inning. But I mean, I think MLB knew that. I mean, it was obvious. I mean, when you time it and have all sorts of things like that, I think I think it was going to be effective. But overall, I like it. I think ultimately the game is going to become more popular, and it also makes it a heck of a lot easier to go to games during the week.
Yeah, another good question, George Eichhorn. Keep up the good work in the chat room. All right, with that said, okay, well, we might as well stay on the rule. So what we do, folks, is we go with the role of the chat room, and I put things in there. Everybody else can add what they want. I do like the checking runners rule as well. We're finally seeing more stolen bases. Yeah, well, no doubt about it. It's certainly adding a definitely intrigue factor in terms of what you're talking about. So again, more stolen bases, more excitement. A lot of people seem to think that's what the game is, and I totally get it. So
it brings back the strategic element as far as I've seen. Like we're seeing guys who are bunting now. It brings back the strategy, which I think at the same time as baseball started to evolve, it's also throwing it back to what we've all grown up with.
Okay, you know what, Chase, I want you to comment on George Eichhorn's questions. You can talk about both. Do you need me to put them on the screen, or you remember them?
No, George, thanks for chiming in. Miss you on the show. From your financial standpoint, aren't the teams losing a lot of concessions revenue? The answer to that's probably not. With the apps that are available today, you can order the food to your seats or order them for fast pickup. So I think they may even be making more, being that you have that ability to order from your seat.
It's great.
News for me, because I never have to worry about it because I'm upstairs. I pay for the medium meal and not have to worry about it, get it all I want, but not helping the waistline, but it's a whole lot easier. But good question, George. I never thought about it because I haven't had to deal with it in a while. We're on a roll in the chat room. Okay, so we go on from the pitch clock to one of Eric's stories that he wrote. So now, if you're a writer and you put some hay out there, we're going to bring it on with the situation. So Eric made a comment as to why the Oakland A's will fail in Las Vegas. And now, Eric, you can take your writing and verbalize it.
Okay. To just before I do that, I do want to clarify. I never said baseball would fail in Las Vegas. I never said that. I just said specifically the Oakland A's. So let's just, if another team but the A's would move there, I think it would be a lot more successful than I think what the A's are going to do. Now to the actual question. All right. Number one, we're seeing, to start, Vegas itself, and I think you could probably say the same thing about the state of Nevada. It's similar to Florida, being that it's a transplant city. They're getting people from all over the globe. Like you might get a guy from Cleveland who roots for the Indians/Guardians, and they generally bring their loyalty from their teams to wherever they're going. So that's something I see in a lot of these, transplant city places. Also, the same can probably be said with Arizona. Vegas, I mean, that's it. It speaks for itself. There's a ton of things else you can do in Vegas. I assure you, when a lot of other people are planning their, let's just say, for instance, a bachelor or bachelorette trip, that they're probably not going to be thinking baseball. I think they're going to be thinking about maybe going to a wacky museum, gambling, clubbing, whatever, everything else that Vegas has been known for. I don't think baseball is necessarily going to be on the list for a lot of those people. Also, the A's themselves, I mean, they're the worst team in baseball. They're virtually unwatchable right now. The only thing watchable about that team might actually be Brent Rooker, and that's saying a lot. One guy who happens to be having a surprise year. I mean, the A's are just unwatchable right now, and unless John Fisher, given how he's run that team into the dump more than the Olympic Stadium in Montreal, I think it's unless he starts investing in that team, no one's going to want to watch it. I mean, for instance, the Marlins, for example, how Jeffrey Luria ran that team into the ground, and so far at their brand new stadium, which I think is a nice stadium, by the way, they're struggling to get people, and I think the same thing could probably happen in Vegas. Also,
all right. Well,
I know they're getting a. I know.
Go ahead.
Do you want me? Yep. I thank God they're getting a retractable roof stadium because it gets very hot in the summertime in Las Vegas, from what I've been told. And also the Raiders, who moved there thinking that it would be all green pasture. they're even struggling to get a home crowd there. And this is something that Mark Davis has been complaining about as of late. And then also, besides it being a transplant state, the A's are going to be worse off there because they got to redevelop a fan base, and you don't develop a fan base quickly unless you start winning.
All right, let's go to the chat room, and then I'm going to go whip it around the horn. All right, let's go ahead. You know what, Chase? I want you to every now and then read some of these chats. How does that sound, partner? Okay, go ahead.
It's perfect. Football talk with Bo. You do have to feel kind of bad for the Oakland fan base losing every major sport of the last few years. 100%. You got to feel bad for the people that rooted or cheered for those teams.
Yeah, the only thing is they had ample time to get new stadiums taking place, and none of it took place. So, and then obviously when the facility goes downhill, they're forced to seek other alternatives. All right, and we'll go back to George Eichhorn. All right, go ahead, Chase.
Transient fans can be found in most MLB cities, but Vegas takes the cake of having more than most. Equals. Good point, Eric.
And last one we're going to put on there.
King SJ. What will Vegas be? The fourth city for the A's franchise? I believe it's the third.
No, I think he's right. I think it is the fourth.
Philadelphia, Kansas City, Oakland. Now
Kansas
soon to be
Very
Vegas.
good.
Sorry.
King, you're on a roll, pal. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. All right, Chase, take a crack at this subject. A lot of other people have.
It's again sad that Oakland is losing another team. Will they work in Vegas? Well, NFL works in Vegas because the NFL has 8 games. NHL works in Vegas because A, they were the first, and B, they have a winning franchise, Stanley Cup champions. Congrats on being the Panthers. The Oakland A's are going in, as Eric says, with no superstars on that team. They have to go in flashy to generate the buzz for fans. It's not like a Los Angeles team moving out to Las Vegas where it's an easy 2-hour drive back and forth or 3-hour drive. Oakland, obviously, in northern California. So it is going to be difficult in the first couple years, and that's when you have to make your splash. But maybe they'll reinvent the franchise. Maybe the owners will finally sell, and an owner will come in to spend money. That's what it's going to take. You have to win to generate fans. I know that more than anyone, being a diehard Marlins fan.
Okay. All right, Mark, you've been patiently waiting on this, so you're gathering information. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that playing in Vegas would be for the home team. It would probably be a pretty good home field advantage, especially for the opposing teams coming to Vegas for whatever reason, and the whole lot of stuff to do there for them opposing teams. I agree with Chase that it's going to take a minute for Oakland to build up their superstars. They're going to need to add some players and some free agency to create some buzz out there.
Right.
I think that once they do, I think that playing in Vegas would be a whole lot of fun with all the lights and all that. It'd be like playing in New York, in a miniature New York City almost, with how many different people from around the world. And I think that the Oakland A's, if they can within 3 to 5 years or even in there or build up something in there, I think that they might be able to become one of the most recognized teams around because of all the people that travel to Las Vegas and maybe attend a game there. So now somebody will more likely to pay more attention to the Oakland A's than being in Oakland. I don't think nobody even knows, like you said, one player on the Oakland A's team right now, where even if they had the exact same team playing in Las Vegas right now, they would probably have more of those guys be known just by the simple fact that somebody goes out to Las Vegas, they're more likely to maybe attend a game and follow some of the guys a little bit more. I think that even nowadays is not so much like the 80s or when Strawberry and Gooden or those guys used to play back then. I think that Las Vegas is not going to deteriorate some guys from wanting to go out. Not going to make guys go out and want to party as much as they do. I think there's a lot more professionals now because there's a lot more people that's trying to get into the league and all that. I think if it was in the 80s, it would probably be a bad idea that you'd probably have more guys not show up for games. Maybe sometimes they might be sleeping in a little bit, but I think now with the professionalism and so many people that are trying to get to the league, and I see it from the youth standpoint with how many baseball academies and how many this and how many that, and guys are really choosing guys now based on the 6 tool more so than just the 5 tool. I think. Everybody can see the 5 tools. It's that 6 tool that matters. So I don't think Las Vegas will create a problem in that aspect now as much as it would have back in the 80s or 70s or something like that, where you'd have a lot more issues with the partying or whatever it may be. So I'm kind of pumped for the Oakland franchise. I mean, for the Vegas franchise rather. I think that getting some sports into that city will, I mean, it's kind of double-edged sword, I guess, everywhere with the gambling that goes on and pro sports teams in the same complex, and you worry about, does they mix together? And I think the answer is yes, they do, as long as everything's policed like it should be. And I think with all the social media and with all the things now that are brought into the light, that it's harder to do some stupid stuff out there. So I think it'll be a good thing for everybody with Oakland going to Las Vegas right now.
All right, you know what I want to do, since I've been to Vegas many times? I'm going to put George Eichhorn's comment back up. First of all, George, having been to Vegas a lot of times, I don't know about you, slot machines and all that gambling would get old after a while. So what I used to do, me personally, is I used to take a helicopter or a plane ride over to the Grand Canyon, which is always good to do. I used to like to go down to Hoover Dam. I used to go to Laughlin, and once considered buying property out in Bullhead City, Arizona. So, for me, I enjoyed those type of drives down to those respective places to go there. Now, with that said, okay, you talk about transient fans. Yes, that's true. But you know what, George? Sometimes the local fans, to me, may not mind spending the money, but the transient fans will take a break from the gambling activities, and they figure buying a baseball ticket's will last you 2 hours, and losing a couple $100 over betting would be another story. So you can still attract a decent crowd and you get transient. I mean, I know what transient fans are like. Many years ago when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were bad and they were in the Lions division, you can tell you how many times the Lions and the Packers and the Minnesota Vikings fans put people over at Tampa Stadium, number one, George. Number two, okay, so, and like Chase alluded to, you go out there and have transient fans with the Marlins. I'm going to say this, and I've said it many times. I truly believe in my mind, if Lone Depot Park was placed right by Hard Rock Stadium, the attendance would be a lot different. It just so happens when you mentioned Jeffrey Loria, okay, we talk about Loria as a guy who really got a sweet deal by moving into the Orange Bowl, and as a result, he got it, and he was able to get it relatively cheap. So he found the money sources. So I have no doubt. Now, the one thing that the A's have that could work out well is for the first couple of years, they'll play in the AAA stadium, so it won't look as empty as it is the Oakland Coliseum. And then when they're able to build up to those bigger crowds, then the product should be comparable on field. And guess what? It won't take them very long to go out there, to me, and find out what they got at AAA. It's just move across the locker room. So, I mean, and it's funny how you mentioned Wayne Newton, George. I actually did see Wayne Newton over at a show one time in Vegas. So, yeah, it is a break for gamblers, George. And that's the thing. But what's so funny is, they're going to have to work it out. The AAA team and the Major League team, well, it's safe to say you could probably use your pedometer to find out what the walk is from one end of the stadium to the other, for sure. So I think it's all right. I think I have no doubt in my mind that when the A's move to the location, I only have a 30,000 seat stadium, so nothing will look as empty. There's no doubt it can work. So I think the transitional stage from leaving Oakland, going to the AAA stadium, ultimately to their new ballpark, should get them on track, I think, to be competitive within a few years' time. That's just my take. Good subject, though, Eric. I'm glad we talked about it. All right, onwards we go. The San Francisco Giants defeat the Dodgers 15-0 on Saturday night. So, Mark Purcell, is that hatred that they'd want to run it up?
I'm sure that they're not sad that they did. I think that every now and then, that when you have rivalries, sometimes you still try to be classy at times, but you definitely don't mind. I mean, they're not laying down suicide squeezes up 13 or 14, but they're definitely not switch hitting if they have to, if they're not going up there in left-handed hitting righty. But they're definitely trying to let them know that, and by the fact that they swept them, that we're trying to beat you. We're not going. You guys have had on us the last few years, and it's our turn to start letting you know that we're here to stay. And I don't think that beating somebody 15-0. If you don't like it, stop it. Get somebody out there to get somebody out there that can get somebody out. The only thing that people get frowned upon is stealing bases up 15, up 10, or whatever it may be. But I'm still trying to hit my double or hit my gap shots or hit my home runs or whatever it may be. And if somebody's taking hacks 3-0 and it's 10-0 or 12-0 and we're up and you throw me a fastball right down the middle, I'm trying to get paid too. So I'm not going to take that 3-0 cookie when you throw it down the middle. And if you didn't like me hitting it over to make it 15-0, then you probably should have threw the slider.
Well, Mark, we call it the old unwritten rules is what they always call it. So I'm with you all the way. All right, Chase.
I'm trying to look up who they had pitching in the final inning when they scored the last 3 runs. Was it do you guys know, was it a position player throwing those beach
I didn't look that deep, Chase, to be honest. I just looked at 15-0. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough. I've been at games where my team has been blown out, but you look all over the league and no lead is really ever safe. There's always times where a team can get hot and come back. 15 runs. I mean, they were up 12 runs going to the 9th. Most of their runs, it looks like, were scored in the 5th and 6th innings. So the first couple innings, there was not much going on as far as scoring wise. But regardless, the Marlins beat the Blue Jays 11-0. Anything could happen in baseball. And Dodgers got swept, which is more crazy than anything last weekend.
All right, Eric.
Well, first off, I'm tired of hearing run up the score, unwritten rules, blah, 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 blah. Well, number one, running up the score is just something people make up. It really doesn't exist. What happens is, if my team's up, whatever, 10, 11, nothing, whatever it might be, well, I'm getting paid too. And then that guy's getting paid too. If you're going to, I get don't steal, don't pull a Niger Morgan and do that. And I get don't put down a bunt. I understand, okay, then you're kind of rubbing it in there. But if you're going to throw me a ball down the middle of the plate, I'm going to try and park that one in the bleachers. But as far as that goes, I'm getting paid. I have to produce. My day is not done yet until the final out is recorded in the 9th inning.
Right.
As far as running up the score thing, I think people just make it up. It doesn't exactly happen. If you don't want the score to go up, play better. That's all I could say.
Right.
If your fastball is not working for you, throw the curveball. If your curveball is not working for you, there's a slider and a changeup. Pitchers have a multiple arsenal of pitches these days. As far as the Dodgers go, getting absolutely walloped by the Giants. No, the Giants didn't run up the score. They just did their job, which is to hit ball and to score runs. And no, I don't feel bad for the Dodgers at all, for that matter.
And with some of the other things, you also don't know what guys have in their contracts. I might be sitting on 19 stolen bases, and I might have a $500,000 bonus if I get 20 bags.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get that bag right now, or I might have, a bonus for a double or a bonus for whatever it is. So I'm not going to stop playing regardless of what the score is.
And
excellent points all the way around.
You got guys too who might be on a 1-year deal or who are just coming up, who literally were just called up and were having a big game. They're playing for that next contract and they're playing to stay. They're literally battling a guy for food on the table.
Absolutely.
Excellent points. The only thing I'll say about it is this: 1-15-0. But remember, I don't care how lopsided the score is. It's only 1 win and 1 loss. That's it.
Yep.
Next day could be 1-0. It doesn't matter. So
baseball's
1 win and 1 loss. That's all it is. All right. Well, you know what? Let's go back to the chat room. Okay, George Icord is at it again. Eric, read it.
Dodgers are showing signs once again as being too soft. The Giants cooked them. They did more than cook them. They deep fried them. But again, the Dodgers. We knew the Dodgers they'd still be a playoff team, but we knew because of the amount of players that they let leave to reset their payroll for probably to try and make a pitch at Ohtani, depending on what happens to him in the offseason. We knew that the Dodgers were going to be not as good as they had been, but still, the Dodgers are the Dodgers, and it's only one game. People, it's only one game in June. We're not even at the break yet, and we're already complaining about a 15-0 game. Relax. You guys could. The Dodgers would have done it too against the Giants. I know that.
I agree. All right. Well, we'll stay on the Dodgers, but for a different reason. Okay. Dodgers manager Dave Roberts pulled rookie pitcher Emmett Sheehan after 6 no-hit innings, and the team subsequently lost 7-5.
Yeah.
Now, here's what we're going to do. Let's break down the numbers here, okay? Sheehan goes 6 innings, 3 strikeouts, 2 walks. To me, those are pretty strong numbers. And as Mark mentioned, they subsequently got swept in the series. So, all right, Mark, why don't you take the lead on this? To me, what was it a good move that they went out there and took him after 6 no inning? And he's let alone the fact that they would subsequently lose the game 7-5.
Well, I've been on both sides of that, actually. I've been the guy that's been pulled out after or having a no-hitter through 6, and I've also had to pull one of my young pitchers out for having a no-hitter through 6 based on his pitch count or what was going on, that kind of stuff. I'm not exactly sure how many pitches that he was there, but I'm going to tell you right now, Hal Lanier is one of my good friends, and he was a big league manager of the year back in whatever it was, and he was telling me about Nolan Ryan and trying to take him off the mound. I could imagine the manager going out there to try to tell Nolan Ryan that you're coming off the mound after 6 no-hit innings. Today's analytical stuff that goes on with all that and everybody trying to protect everybody all the time, I think backfires more on people than it does help them. I think that everybody's hair stands up on end when everybody talks about 100 pitches in a game. I think that almost when you call the Dodgers going soft, I'm thinking everything's gone soft a little bit. Everything, whatever sport it may be, and I think to pull a guy out, and now if he's sitting around 90 pitches, I got to send him back out there. You're going to throw 120 and see if you can get a couple guys out. You're a big league pitcher. You're going to throw 120 pitches at least, and I'm sending you back out there until you get one guy on. One guy gets on, then I'll take you out. But I'm gonna give you that opportunity to get 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. As soon as the first guy gets on, you come out, then you do the win-win situation. You give him a chance for the win and everything else, and then you also give your team a chance to win as well. And of course, it backfired on him. But I'm sending him out until he gets at least one guy on. Then one guy gets on, then I make a change.
Yeah, not only that, I'll turn over to you, Chase, in a quick second, all right? To get a guy on is one thing, but if he's starting to throw all over the place and his control comes into question, there's certain signs that you have to look for until you finally make a change.
Here's how it trickles down to the youth. For example, we're in a big 16 and under tournament the other day, and we're playing guys that got D1 commits all over. And it's a winner go home type game. I have a young man, and I don't want to mention his name, but he's thrown a no-hitter through 4 innings. And then in between innings, he says, I'm feeling tired, like I might hit a couple guys. I think I need to come out.
All right.
What? Okay, well, you coming out. And so we end up losing that game. So me and him have a huge talk because his daddy just bought him a car off the showroom lot. And I said, you looked and acted like the guy that daddy just bought you a car off the showroom lot. There was not much toughness there. So I think that we're creating a lack of toughness in our players right now.
Good point. All right, Chase, now I'll turn it over to you.
How soft are these players becoming? But is it really that player, that pitcher that got taken off? Would he have got taken off? In Mark's case, yes. Your young pitcher did, but the pitcher for the Dodgers, would he have stayed on? That's a question. What was that?
I bet you if I'm him, I'm mad.
Yeah.
If I'm him, I'm a little mad right now.
If correct me if I'm wrong, Dave Roberts comes from the Don Mattingly managerial tree.
Yeah.
See, I have a special feeling for Doc though, because my first spring training with the Tigers, he was my locker partner, and he from UCLA, and he talked about. I could tell then that he was special just because of how he talked about everybody. For a month straight, I got to talk to him every morning. We were the first two there almost. He always had his coffee and his newspaper reading it and had a smile on his face talking about the day of baseball and all that. So I have a soft spot for Doc, but I think that Doc could be a little harder right there. My other question real quick is that, do you think that there's somebody from the front office analytical aspect calling down in there and say, hey, you got to take this guy out? Now, that part I don't know, but if I was a manager, I don't know if I could handle somebody telling me to take somebody out with the analytical part, which happens a little bit, a la Blake Snell back a little bit ago when they took him out. So I don't know.
I mean, you look, all teams have pitch counts and innings minimums for these young guys. Is it becoming too soft? You look at Don Mattingly last year. Edward Cabrera came off the IL. He was throwing a 5-inning no-hitter against the Cubs, and he took him out after only 78 pitches. He looked like he could go another couple innings. But, these guys are young. They want to get the most out of them as they can while they're cheap, and if they blow their arms out, they can't do that. So that's basically it. They're going to hold them to these pitch counts and innings minimum.
These
Yeah, but you know what, Chase? Here's the thing. I'm glad you guys are talking about Don Mattingly, and I know him real well. He's really become a good friend of mine,
Great guy.
and we're going to be in touch. But here's the thing: Don Mattingly probably did find out how well his pitchers, how they felt, but he did stretch his starters out a lot more than most people did compared to others. He did because he's able to connect the eras real well. So you rest assured, and don't forget the Marlins have an excellent pitching coach and Mel Stottlemyre Jr. too. So between Don and Mel Stottlemyre Jr., I truly believe in my mind that they had a pretty good feel because Sandy Alcantara had an awful lot of complete games.
Yeah.
He probably had more complete games than a lot of guys have had in the last several years. So Don wasn't afraid to let his guys go if he had to.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the pitch counts and stuff right now, and you go back to Strasburg, Kerry Wood, Mark Pryor, some of these guys that are put on strict pitch counts are always hurt. And then if you go look at the style of bullpens and the thought process and throwing in Japan and all that, I believe if you go look at the surgery rate between the Japan pitchers and the American pitchers and the big league baseball or Japan leagues over there, I believe that ours is almost doubled what theirs is. And if they threw a 120 pitch game, they're going to throw a 120 pitch bullpen the next day. So they do a whole lot more throwing than what we do over here. So I think they need to start letting these guys throw.
Well,
all right. Well, now we're going to turn over to you, Eric. Go ahead.
Well, in Japan, you don't get a lot of hard throws over there. I mean, you get a few every now and then, but they're going a lot. They're a lot more methodical, a lot more strategic with off-speed pitches, and they're not throwing as hard. So that's part of the reason why their arms are still intact, unlike us over here in America. But also yes, Don Mattingly was was very very nearly as old school as he could get. The hitman let the horses run, especially Sandy Alcantara. But as far as the pitcher getting pulled in Los Angeles, I don't know what his pitch count was. I mean, that could have very well been a factor. He very well could have been at like 90 plus or even 100 plus. I don't know. But as far as there, I think honestly, because I think these days, it's a general manager's world these days. And front offices, especially with pitchers, I think live in their fears a little bit, especially when it comes to pitchers, especially with what happened to guys like back in the day, like Ed Edinson Volsquez when he was with the Reds. Also, Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor when Dusty Baker mercilessly pitched their arms into the ground. And also other guys, and also what we're seeing now with Jacob deGrom. But also, Steven Strasburg had issues prior to coming to the bigs anyway. He already had arm problems to begin with, so it wasn't like anything was new there. And Washington kind of knew what they were, at least should have known what they were getting at the time. But they led to a ring, so mission accomplished. But as far as pitchers now, I thought it was a little bit of a soft move saying, "Oh, I feel like I'm going to hit a guys." No, I mean, first, I've seen Nolan Ryan's reaction. If you try and poll him, it's not a very nice one or friendly one. I don't think it can be I don't think what he said could be recorded on here. But as far as pitchers now, I mean, I think honestly they're getting hurt more because they're not throwing enough. But here's the thing: you're throwing in one motion. I'm just going to use my right hand for instance because the righty's world. I'm just rebelling against it as a lefty. As a pitcher, you're going in one motion over and over and over again. You're putting a lot of pressure on your elbow here. I learned this from Jenny Finch's father. And you're going up here, and then you're just firing that sucker in there. Doing that one motion over and over again is very taxing on the arm. And so that's why we're seeing, and eventually, you're going to get hurt. I mean, you're seeing guys now, it seems like the rate of Tommy John surgery has gone up, including what, unfortunately, shockingly, parents have asked doctors to do it on their sons, supposedly because you can pitch better. No, that's not the deal. But here's the thing. There's really no way around a pitcher getting hurt, because he's doing one motion over and over again. I think part of it, too, is you got to stretch before you throw. Otherwise, you're going to go home and your arm is barking like a dog. Believe me.
Okay, well, the only thing I'll say is I know Billy Martin would have never have lasted in this time period for sure, but we'll leave it at that.
He was at 89 pitches. Answer that question for us all.
Oh, you did find out it was 89 pitches?
89 through 6?
Yeah.
I know it's a borderline call. I still may have considered, like what Mark was saying, give him another hitter or two, and then you see where it goes. But it's not my decision, not anybody. All we're really literally doing is commenting on that. So there you go, Chase. Thanks for giving us the answer. All right. With that said, okay, let's go on to something that Mark brought up earlier. I want to get to before we wrap it up with Luis Arraez. Are we? So here's the question: Are we taking analytics too far, Eric?
Yes, it has done unspeakable damage to the game. There are some things about analytics that I think are useful, like OPS, which really measures a player's productivity overall. I think that's important. I think statistically, how a hitter hits against a pitcher, which has been around forever. I think that's important. But I think that the game has become way too analytical. I think now we're obsessed with the numbers. We can thank I'm going to blame the Tampa Bay Rays for ruining the game that way because they decided to go bring a guy off hike a guy off Wall Street, and then boom, they're in the World Series in '08. But I think yes, it's become way too analytical. I think we have to go back to kind of like what we're starting to do now with on the field. We have to start doing it in the front office. These teams have to, and these owners have to, because I will say this: analytics never won anybody a World Series ring. I can tell you that much. Had the Astros been all analytical in 17, say what you will about that ring, had they not got Justin Verlander, no World Series ring for them, and that was not analytics, I assure you.
Okay. All right. Chase?
Yes, too analytical. The managers are not able to manage properly like they want to. The lineups are chosen for them. It's who hits off the pitcher better, who hits lefties, who hits righties. You're mix and matching the lineups. The players are out of sync in some cases. It's just too much. Let the players play the game and let the best players play every day. I hate bringing it always back to the Marlins, but our lineup changes every day, and it's insane. And we'll talk about Arraez. He's probably the only one who doesn't suffer from this in the game right now, at least on this team. But, players need to play and they need to stay hot. If they get hot, they shouldn't be benched the next day after having 3 hits. It's just overthinking and mixing and matching.
Okay, Mark?
Well, the analytics actually has hurt the knowledge of the game for the most part of whether you're the pitcher or whether you're the hitter. Everything's now stuff or swing as hard as you can. There's no more everybody like can take a little flipper to right field for a base hit. It's more about swinging 0-2 as hard as you can because you want that launch angle and that 115 mile an hour off the bat, or the pitcher wants his breaking ball to overthrow it so much that it bounces because I'm trying to get my RPMs up. I even see it a lot at the youth, which is going into the big leagues and into college. Don't get me wrong, the College World Series right now is amazing, and I love watching it. But as they get to the big leagues and all that, watching these youth guys, these juniors and seniors in high school that are watching these exit velos or the fact that they're posting everything all over social media about look at me do this or look at me do that. Nobody wants to hit the ball to the second baseman anymore and get that runner from second to third because the analytics say swing as hard as you can right in that spot. I don't think there's as much walk this guy to get to the next guy because he's going to hit it a double play because I've owned him for a little while. I know he's going to swing it the slider away or anything like that. It takes a lot of thinking. It takes it from chess and makes it to checkers. So that's the biggest thing that I think analytics has done is dumbfounded the game for everybody a little bit. Just about stuff and swinging as hard as you can looks like where the game is headed right now. So many dumb numbers, 60-yard dashes that I'm dealing with out here, spin rate, like even our little showcase that we're having coming up. I have to have that stuff there because people like reading about themselves or that kind of stuff. So I have to have the thing that measures your spin rate or your exit velocity or all that kind of stuff because people want to see that nowadays, which is really bad for the game, I think.
All right, you know what, King? I'm going to double up on your comments too. I'm going to read King's comments first. Agree about it getting too analytical. Need to find a happy medium with it. Easier said than done. I know. Well, you know what? Here's the thing, King. I'll tell you why I like this comment in a lot of ways. Number one, excuse me, I'm fine with there being a degree of analytics, and I mean a degree of it. I've always felt that managers should be able to manage from their gut and their instincts, and that's why I like the idea that they even have a bench coach with them to help them go ahead and navigate through it. So, King, you are really, really on target. It is way too analytical. There's no doubt about it. What happened to just a manager using his gut and then being able to have stats that be adding to it rather than determining the whole thing? To me, what this reminded me of, in an indirect sense, is watching the college football decide they're champion by a computer rather than the human element. Now, again, I don't want to get into that too much because obviously we'll be dealing with a playoff system, but too many stats, too many analytics. And nowadays you have teams with 10, 15, 20 people doing analytics. I wouldn't know where to start. I was never a great math student, so what makes you think I'm going to be good at this stuff? I mean, Billy Bean did a good job with Moneyball. I'll give him that. But analytics, you can only go too far. Manage with your gut. And if you talk about a lot of teams that managers will tell you like to manage with their gut, but like you guys say, they're getting heat from the front office about what to do, and there's just too much interference. All right.
Like one more thing on it real quick. Like
Sure.
like for example, take Kirk Gibson. He was 0 for 15 with 15 strikeouts against Goose Gossett. He wouldn't have had a chance to hit that home run in 84. I know he wouldn't have, because the analytics would have told Sparky to take him out right then. And instead, he let the man hit, and he hits a 3-run jack against the Padres, and the rest of history right there. But I don't think he would have had a chance to hit if the analytics was going around there.
Well, if you're going to add a topic, comment, do it with the Tigers. My God, the man lives in Lakeland anyway, so it doesn't matter. And I'll be getting together with him a few weeks. Now, the topic of the show, I know we wait a little bit longer. There was a lot of important things to get to, is one I can relate to very well. Luis Arraez is making a habit of going 5 for 5. He did it at Washington against the Nationals on the road. I saw 2 games in the last couple of weeks when he did it against the Oakland A's, and then I saw it last night against the Toronto Blue Jays. You know, when you talk about the numbers, okay, and I am going to get into some numbers. He's in 67 games, he's hitting 400 with 255 at-bats, 102 hits, 2 home runs, and 35 RBIs, 15 strikeouts, 15 walks. And the only comparisons that I can logically make would be Tony Gwynn, Rod Carew, and Wade Boggs. But to me, Luis Arraez, and I had a chance to meet the guy, very friendly. The fans and the media love him because he's just a free spirit. So to me, a guy like Luis Arraez puts the fun back into baseball. He really, really does. But Eric, you're a numbers guy. What do you think of these numbers, or what do you think of Luis Arraez? And Chase, you're going to be answering this question last.
Well, you know, I knew Chase would get in there somehow, but
Yeah,
I
like
think
last.
Yep. Number one, I love it. You know, the fact that we're having a second year where I thought, you know, 2022 with the record breaking with, you know, our Pujols hitting 700 and Aaron Judge obviously doing what he did. You know, I thought, you know, that was as good as we're probably not going to see something similar to that again. But this year, watching a guy have a serious run at hitting 400 and potentially breaking Ted Williams' record, that's unbelievable. I mean, especially for a guy who, you know, which I, you know, again, he's, you know, I don't see a lot of him on the tube just because, you know, but hearing that he is a great guy, you know, and free spirited, you know, I love it. The fact that, you know, this is a guy like there are guys who come into the league, you know, and it doesn't happen as often anymore as it used to, but there are guys who just hit. You can't teach it. They just do it. And Luis Arraez is one of those guys and always has been, especially back to his days with the Twins. But, you know, the fact that, you know, he's got an opportunity to hit 400 and he's actually making people really pay attention to the Marlins, something that hasn't really been done aside from seeing if Sandy Alcantara is going to complete the game or he get double-digit strikeouts. But, you know, but the fact that he is, you know, has a real chance to really, I really think he's got an opportunity to really put, you know, baseball in Miami back on the map if he goes all the way. Even if he doesn't and say, like, let's just say he caps out at like 375, 380, 398 maybe. We haven't seen that since Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn was one of those guys where you can't teach that. He just does. And Luis Arraez is finally a breath of fresh air of a guy who just hits.
Well, the thing is don't forget, Luis Arraez went out there and won a batting title with the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah.
And the Marlins traded straight up Pablo Lopez, who's a good pitcher, to the Twins. So it's not like it was an awkward trade. You know, no, I think it was a win-win depending what both teams really thought they could benefit. But right now, the early returns of Arraez. And don't forget the fact that this guy can hit the ball to all fields.
Right.
You know, I saw him last night, 5 hits, 2 went to left and 3 went to right. They always say in baseball, hit it where they ain't. Now, let me tell you, Luis Arraez does hit it where they ain't. All right, Mark.
I haven't seen a hitter like that since Ichiro. Period.
I like Ichiro too. Ichiro was good like that too. Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs, Lewis right here, 5 for 5, flirting with 400. It's refreshing. It's refreshing to see that baseball is still baseball and it's not a home run derby strikeout show.
Right.
You show up to the game, you're sitting there, it almost feels like soccer at times where you run all day long and you win 1-0 because there's a goal. It's almost you go to a baseball game, you sit 9 innings, you see one guy hit a home run, you win the game. You go out there and you watch this guy battle at bat after at bat after at bat. And as a baseball purist, it becomes beautiful. And, there's different, when you talk about analytics and you talk about stats, sometimes analytics are different than stats. There's different stats that have nothing to do with analytics. And right now he's covering all the baseball stats. I'm not worried about your launch angles or your spin rates or your exit velocities or this kind of stuff. He's just up there grinding at bat after at bat after at bat and having an idea of what he's trying to do at the plate, regardless who's on the mound. So it's really refreshing to see a guy like this. I remember one of my favorite series of all time was Mark Grace and Will Clark going back and forth. And I don't remember, was it maybe 87, or maybe 88? I can't remember, but in there somewhere, both of them was hitting right around 450 to 500 for them series. And watching this guy go up to the plate right now reminds me of those two, where I'm just not going to get out. You're not going to get me out right now if I take a little flipper to the left or a double in the gap to right. And it's really refreshing to see the baseball purist watch this guy go up there and just battle pitchers rather than just try to swing for the downs every time.
All right. The only thing I'll say before I turn over you, Chase, is being at the game yesterday against the Blue Jays. Can you imagine that Don Mattingly thinks, I leave, Kim Ming is doing what she can to upgrade the talent, and he's salivating that he could have had this guy on his team. I mean, that Don Mattingly's got to be angry inside knowing this is what I had to work with. And now Skip Schumacher is being dealt with a lot different hand, and he's winning with it. I don't want to say anything because I feel if that's the case, I get angry because nobody messes with Don Mattingly, one of my favorite people of all time. And it's it. I am biased toward Mattingly. I always have been, always will be. And I'll never change my thinking. All right, Chase, you have the final word on the topic.
I'm on the other side of the spectrum there. And I love Don Mattingly as a player. I loved him as a person. Nicest guy you'll ever meet. You can attest to that. As a manager, I think he had Christian Yelich, he had Giancarlo Stanton, and he had Marcell Ozuna in his outfield, and he couldn't win over 500 that season. But I love Don Mattingly as a person. Not saying anything bad about that. So regarding Luis Arraez, he's doing something in South Florida that I've never seen as a baseball fan for 30 years in South Florida. Look, I didn't see baseball live before I was 7 years old. I didn't see Barry Bonds when he was with the Pirates before the upgrade to his body over time. I saw Tony Gwynn play, and he was amazing. I've seen Ichiro play live. He's amazing. But I haven't seen something like this since Miguel Cabrera in his first couple years. But it was a different type of player than Luis Arraez is. The type, he's just a natural hitter, and he's doing it with swings that normally would equal a pop-up or a ground out, and he's just hitting in the perfect spots, and he's doing it all over the field, right? It's not just to one spot. If they're covering or shifting as they can now, not like they did the previous seasons, but he's beating the smaller shifts, and that could be a big difference. He's a career 314 guy in the American League. That's who the Marlins thought they traded for. Wow, are they happy as can be right now? They're getting a guy who's batting at now 398 after today. And last week or 2 weeks ago, we discussed him when he was, I believe, at 403.
Right.
After that show, he went 0 for 15 or had an 0 for 15 streak and went down to 372. You're thinking, okay, it was fun while it lasted. Takes a day off, goes to Washington. Last Friday goes 5 for 5. The next day, I believe he went 1 for 3, takes Sunday off, comes back and goes 5 for 5 and treats you to a good show yesterday. So happy to have this guy. He's the MVP of the league. I don't care what anyone else does. What he's doing for this team in South Florida, he deserves to win. And what he's doing for baseball, we're seeing something bigger than the Triple Crown, something that hasn't been done in so long.
All right. Well, you know what? This is a portion of the show where when I have a different guest on here, Eric and Chase will have one question to ask Mark Purcell. Okay, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, Eric, what's your question for Mark?
So you're talking about the whole analytics thing with the amount of teams in your academy and things like that. How big of a role does it play in your program?
It doesn't. The only time I do it for the boys is when we send it stuff on videos to colleges and stuff, which doesn't really show the kind of player they are. It just shows the kind of the showcase that they are, which is a shame on some of my guys, because maybe I have a guy that maybe doesn't run the 6'6" 60. He's more like a 7 flat 60 or just a baseball playing speed, right? It kind of hurts them a little bit in that aspect. So I don't really – the only part of the analytics that sometimes they do help, maybe if you're teaching a guy how to throw a breaking ball a little bit better or something like that, so they get an idea of why you have to spin it better. But when they start concentrating on that in the games, it really affects their control or whatever else it may be. I wouldn't say that it plays a big part in the program as far as is anything other than having people see their numbers that might give them a chance to go to college. But I don't think it really helps them out is figuring out how to play chess. If that makes sense. Good
question, Eric. All right. Chase, what's your question?
Earlier in the show, you were discussing your history and whatnot. Congratulations on a wonderful career, right? In the minors and overseas. What's the game difference from the U.S. game versus playing overseas? Is there a big difference, or is baseball?
On the field, baseball is baseball. I would say that it's a little more personal over there. What I mean by that is everybody's sliding in hard, and it's almost like a war over there a little bit every game. It's almost like a football game. They're not afraid to take you out at the plate. They're not afraid to throw up and in at you. They're not afraid to break up the double play. The fans are crazy. The fans are I mean, I was playing in Venezuela and in Caracas, and we had 75,000 people at a game in the Coliseum, and we had Bobby Abreu in center field. And I'm in the bullpen, and I'm sitting next to a young cat with an AK-47 in his arm and a guard dog. Well, in the center field, there was about a 15-foot high fence. They would drop a young man down, and he'd run out to try to get Bobby Abreu's autograph, and they would let him do it for a little bit. Then they would let that dog go. That kid would run back over to that fence. They'd almost have like a human rope. They would got like 4 or 5 people hanging over and pull that kid back up. So I would say that playing overseas had a little bit more of a college football atmosphere than it would like a American baseball game where you kind of come here and it's kind of low key unless somebody hits a double. Over there, pitch to pitch, they're beating drums. They have security guards in the stands that are hitting the guys with the swords a little dull, and they're also not afraid to throw M6 firecrackers on the field either. If you're coming in the dugout, sometimes you better watch out for them firecrackers coming over the dugout on there. And I will tell you that they have a lot more cheerleaders over there, because you're not going to go to the Yankee game usually and have the Yankee girls dancing on the dugout as you would have the Pepsi girls over in Caracas. I got to play in some very big games. Magallanes versus Caracas is like one of the top 5 rivalries in all sports or something that I was told before. Hold on 1 second. Are you still there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay. There was a game when the game got over. We actually won at their place, and we were trying to get to our bus. So they wouldn't let us out of the locker room. There was probably about 3,000 to 5,000 people that wouldn't let us out of the locker room. So they had to take the security guards in there, the police barricade, and they made a little hole for us. And they took the big water hose through the clubhouse into there and turned that thing on so they can make a tunnel to the bus. And we get to the bus and we get on there, and some of the fans started rocking it, and our bus driver just put that thing in drive and decided to go. It was probably one of the most craziest things I've ever been a part of, but playing overseas was one of the most fun times I've ever had.
Awesome. Great question. Great questions for both of you. All right. First of all, I want to thank everybody in the chat room. Will Vogel, King S, Football Talk with George, Football Talk with Bo, George Eichhorn. Of course, George Eichhorn does appear on the football show. And let's keep going down the list. Okay, King was really good tonight. And King, I always look forward to seeing your points in here as well. We'll mention his last one so you get it up there as Jays fan. as a Jays fan, I was very nervous about having to face Arraez in the ninth. Yeah, I'm sure you probably were, but don't feel too bad. You're part of the majority, not the minority. So, with that said, this is 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Before I let everybody know how they can get a hold of them, I want to point out one more time that 108 Stitches Baseball Talk is being broadcast around the world. The audio version of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for 1,000 subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. Participate in the chat room. That's one way to do it. Or send topic ideas to South Florida Tribune at gmail.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, call me at 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Twitter, you find us at Tribune South. And once again, Candy Ebling does an outstanding job behind the scenes. She appears on the shows once in a while, but she's a mastermind behind the whole South Florida Tribune, from the written all the way to the broadcast. So with that said, okay, Eric, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
You can follow me on my Twitter at Sports Team News, or you can find me on my blog at bellyupsports.com, where, yes, you can find what is now becoming the iconic article of why the Athletics will fail in Las Vegas.
Sure became iconic because I decided to let you verbalize it and know that I'm paying attention to my kids' work. And every once in a while, you want to get a topic on there, mention something that's worth my vocal cords, and then it gets on, as you saw tonight. Although what we ended up doing, though, is on the first end of the doubleheader, Jeremy Ballreich had a really good comment about education and gambling, and we put that on the topic. So it's not like, to me, it's unrealistic that people on my crew that have an opportunity to write, I won't hesitate to use those topics. Hello, Ralph Williams. All right, Chase, let everybody know they get a hold of you.
All right, you can find me at Loud Marlins Fan on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and now I'm on Tribal. You could also listen to the Loud Marlin Fans podcast on all podcast platforms. Something I try to do once every 2 weeks, the Loud Marlin Fan podcast, where I review my stories growing up South Florida sports fan, rooting for the Marlins, and what they mean to me and other fans. Thank you.
And, of course, Chase Blake is a regular on 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, and I'm thrilled to have him. Let me tell you, I love building a crew of people, to me, like this. It's just unbelievable to develop your own talent, as Mark Purcell's will attest to. With that said, okay, Mark, let everybody know how they get a hold of you as well.
Florida Baseball Heaven, Angels and Miracles is our website. To be honest with you, I don't even know how to get a hold of us. My wife does all our social media. I know we have FBH_Angels is our Twitter account. That might be the only thing that I know how, because my job is to call every college coach to find all my players a home, and that's how I do most of getting a hold of them. Word of mouth has been real good for my baseball program around here, and we're just now getting into the social media stuff this season. We're up to over 200 kids in our program from 8 to 18, located in Plant City and Lakeland is where we do all our practices and stuff. And so be looking to look out for the social media. The only I really that's a tough question for me, because like even me trying to get on this computer earlier, my technology game is not the best.
Well, you know, everybody has their technology. I remember when COVID-19 hit, I wasn't very good at Zoom, but I got news for you. And the Marlins PR people, communications people, are some of the greatest to deal with. They really are. I'll start with Jason Latimer. John Eric Alvarez is unbelievable. Before he left to go to the Washington Nationals, Daniel Kirsch, and now they have another young lady who's dynamite. Her name is Gally. And I always mispronounce her last name, but I'll just say Gally Sharon, I believe, and she's an absolute doll too. So, you know, when you have the ability to work with a relationship like them, they're unbelievable. And they had John Eric Alvarez was unbelievable, because when I was struggling with technology, trying to get on the Zoom calls, he said, "Don't worry, I'm here to help you." It only took him a half a dozen times or so to get me figured out, but he was as patient as could be. And they were all great. And then once I figured it out, well, now John and I laugh at it these days. So don't worry, Mark. you got on here. We look forward to bringing on
All right.
future editions of the Sports Exchange as well, because you told me tonight that you were well-rounded, like talk other sports. So I'll definitely keep that in mind. So, with that said, this is 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. My name is Scott Morganroth, your host. So for Eric Katz, Chase Blake, and Mark Purcell, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. And we will catch you the next time, everybody. Take it easy. Good night. And once again, thank you for joining us and all the incredible things that we had in the chat room. I will say this before we log off. The folks in the chat room, to me, are what makes this fun, because we come up very prepared with our topics, but we also certainly look for ideas to enhance what we're doing. So we're thankful to those individuals who made those contributions. Good night, everybody.